Chapter 3. Meet Mina. Liam left the bed and breakfast around 9 a.m., deciding to take the scenic route around the lake, even though Mrs. Stockton drew a map that would have taken him directly to the bookstore. As he strolled along the banks, he sensed the note pulsing like a heart in his jacket pocket. He knew that it was his imagination, but he couldn't help taking it out several times to pore over the handwriting and ensure its existence. The weeping willows were backlit by the morning sun, creating an ethereal atmosphere which made the whole trip feel like a dream. He weaved through the trees, taking in the earthy odors and gentle sounds of nature, until he reached the edge of the park. He was now in the town square and had to get his bearings in order to pick up where Mrs. Stockton's directions left off. Luckily, he saw the landmark she'd told him about, which was a 5-foot-tall wrought iron statue of a swan. He walked over to the mound it rested on, where red and yellow Canada lilies gently fluttered in the warm breeze around the base. The swan was graceful, with its head bowed slightly, not so much in obeisance as in humility. The sign under the swan was chiseled in gray marble. It read, "Welcome to Willow Lake. This is the place where all your dreams were leading you." No one was quoted, and there was no data about the population, geography, or any other statistics. Liam was enchanted and annoyed at the same time. The whimsical side to him loved the idea of such a mysterious town, but the logical side was impatient to know more. His first stop was the bookstore, however, as he had to know who wrote the note. He turned and noticed that he was on Sassafras Road, another name that enchanted as well as annoyed him. He started walking down the pretty street, which was lined with silver and sugar maples. People had started bustling about, including shoppers, mothers, delivery vans, and workers, although no one was spruced up like in the city. In Willow Lake, every day felt like Sunday. Liam noticed the Ladybird Cafe, which boasted the best chocolate fruitcake in the region. Even though he'd eaten, his stomach started growling for a taste, but he ignored the rumblings and continued on, until he came to Wassail Grove. Following the Willow Lake bookstore sign that pointed the way, he noticed that it was more like a service road, as the trees were a little haphazard. Several weeping willows draped their branches onto the road and obscured part of the sidewalk. He walked past a few old houses with gardens that reminded him of pictures he'd seen of English cottages. When he laid eyes on the Art Deco building partially hidden by the willow branches on the edge of the lake, he sensed secret whispers in his mind. He felt like he knew the place, whether as a remnant of a dream or an actual memory. He started walking slowly up the wide driveway, doing his best to drink in everything that came into view. This included the wooden benches on the banks of the lake, where several people were sitting or reading or staring at the calm surface of the water. The majority of the people were older, so Liam assumed that since it was a workday, they must have been retirees. The bookstore itself was old and majestic. When he arrived at the front door, he saw a placard that advised how the building had been used previously as a dance hall, from 1922 to 1973, when William and Mary Heathcote bought it and turned it into the biggest bookstore in town. He was amazed at how hard his heart was pounding. He also felt the note in his pocket twitch. Or was that his imagination again? He stepped in and detected a faint scent, like honeyed incense. It drew him in further, until he found himself in the middle of the store, rubbernecking like a tourist. The ceiling was high, and there were many windows, where natural light streamed in and shone on the smooth woodwork. To the back of the building was a spiral staircase, which led to a mezzanine with more books and bric-a-brac. He wandered around in a daze until a high-pitched voice rang in his ears. "Hey, do you need any assistance?" He spun around and came face to face with Mina. Her fire engine red hair spilled down the right side of her head, exposing the shaved section on her left. Her elven face beamed a wide smile as her blue eyes sparkled deep in the pit of her black eyeliner and mascara. Maybe. I'm not sure. Actually, I think I'm just browsing for now. Thanks." He stumbled over his own words like a drunk. She wrinkled her small nose and widened her eyes. "You think?" She smiled cheekily. He scratched his head nervously and then rubbed his chin. "Yeah, if that's okay."
Okay then.
She turned to walk away, peering over her sharp shoulder at him, suspicious eyes narrowing.
Let me know if you need any help.
Okay. He went over to the philosophy section and picked up Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. He kept staring at Mina over the top of the book, finding her mannerisms and appearance disturbingly alluring. Normally he veered away from nutty people, preferring normal, down-to-earth girls. He was distracted by her kooky habit of humming in a falsetto voice, along with her black and white striped stockings, fuzzy purple sweater, and emerald green miniskirt. He expected to see pixie ears and a flute. She continued humming as she furtively watched him browsing, obviously shuffling books back and forth just to appear busy. Then he remembered the note. Could this crazy creature be the one who'd written it? Surely not. The tone and script denoted a more sophisticated hand. Still, he had to find out, without giving away the fact that he'd opened a letter that belonged to someone else. He slowly approached the counter as he pretended to be interested in everything along the way, such as pencils made from real twigs, fruit-shaped erasers, mini notebooks, and souvenirs. When he got to the front, after apologizing for bumping into a tall, thin man who was obviously wearing a little makeup, he slowly pulled the envelope out of his pocket before thrusting it back in. "Excuse me, I was wondering if you could tell me who sends the notes out to customers," he asked slyly. She looked at him like he was speaking another language.
Notes?
She squeaked, then giggled. "Yes, the notes to your old customers. You know, the ones on the mailing list, I suppose." The anxiety was gnawing at his insides like he'd swallowed a bucket of ants.
Oh, the cards. Why?
She tilted her head to the right and threw him a suspicious look. He felt the panic building, but reminded himself that this was really no big deal. Well, I think I recognize the penmanship." He realized that this was lame, so he corrected himself. "Actually, I admire it so much, I wondered who might have written it." She frowned and smiled at the same time. Leaning forward, she asked,
"What difference does it make? What does it matter?"
He could have sworn he had heard a snicker prowling around inside her skinny throat. He fidgeted under her scrutiny, first reaching inside his pocket for the letter, then thinking better of it and stuffing it back in. He said, and, well, a lot, as he shuffled around on the spot and alternated between manic gestures and blank stares. Mina found this amusing, so she giggled quietly while she leaned over the counter, resting her pointy chin in her tiny hands. Finally, he blurted, "It doesn't matter. I'm just curious." They both stared at each other for a moment before Mina pulled back and stretched like a cat.
"Okay then, it depends. Show it to me."
She stared at his pocket like a wild animal thirsting for blood. Liam placed his left hand over the pocket protectively. "What?" he asked like an impudent child. She nodded at his pocket with a wry smile spreading across her impish face.
"Whatever's in your pocket, dude."
He looked down hesitantly and then back up at her, torn between not wanting to drag it out of his pocket and wanting to know who wrote it. Curiosity won out. He took it out and hung onto it for a while before bringing it up for her to see. She snatched it out of his hand with a triumphant laugh. "Hey!" He tried to grab it, but she managed to hide it behind her back.
"Not so fast, dude,"
she teased. "My name is Liam, not dude," he spat.
Liam.
She repeated his name like she was trying it on for size. She glanced at the envelope and turned it over, then eyed Liam with a teasing snarl.
"This was meant for Miss Beauchamp. How did you get it?"
He thought of running out of the store, but his desire to know who wrote the note overpowered his fear. He glanced around nervously and leaned in closer. "Please," he hissed. She laughed and shook her head.
"Maybe I know, maybe I don't."
"Either you do or don't. No games." When she continued giggling, he realized that she was flirting with him. At first he was infuriated, but then it dawned on him that he could use it to his advantage. One thing about Liam, which was among other things that needed work, he had a tendency to be shallow. We all can be that way every so often. He decided to smile and shrug his shoulders. "I'm sorry. I guess I'm a sucker for lovely handwriting. Can I have it back?" He winked at her, but she was no fool.
I think you're a mental case,
she said calmly. She slowly handed it back, but kept a tight grip on it as she giggled again. Liam pulled hard and nearly dragged her across the counter. He was shocked and embarrassed. "Are you all right? Sorry," he blubbered as she laughed like a high-pitched hyena.
I'm fine. You're just so pathetic and desperate.
She continued laughing, even though she had just insulted him. He muttered an expletive under his breath, pocketed the note, and turned to storm off. Then she yelled,
"Okay, you got me. It's mine."
He looked back at her as he continued to the door. "Of course. Of all people, it had to be you."
"No, really, I'm sorry. I was just having some fun. Come on."
She leaned over the counter in a seductive pose, making a pouty face and fluttering her eyelashes. It was hilarious, but Liam was still intrigued by the pixie girl. He went back to the counter, sure that she was not the one who'd written the note. But his hormones were doing the smoke and mirror routine. He could always have some fun with her. Besides, he'd been miserable ever since the engagement was broken, and he was lonely. "What's your name?" he asked with a smile he used often on gullible girls.
"Mina,"
she squeaked. Even though he had never been a fan of the girly routine, there was something charming about the little space cadet. "You wrote this?" She hesitated, then beamed widely.
"Yep."
"Okay. Well, you have a fascinating hand, Mina."
"Thank you."
She continued grinning like she was trying hard not to devolve into a grimace. He knew that she was probably already kicking herself for lying, but he decided that it would give him an excuse to keep coming back and find his phantom scribe. After spending some time browsing further, he bought Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet and found the courage to ask Mina out on a date. She accepted with a series of giggles and squeals, along with anecdotes about not being your average girl. "Okay, I'm cutting in now, just to have a little rant about youth and romance. To be fair, we've all been through it and made our mistakes, so there's no point bagging the younger generation mercilessly. I will say, though, with hindsight, it was all a bit too much when I was younger. There were so many expectations and rules about how you conducted yourself and what was expected of you from society. What most young people don't get is that there really are repercussions for the stupidity that can arise from inexperience and overzealous antics. Like standing on a train track, an older person might jump out of the way, while a younger person might lay down and assume that either someone else will fix the problem or that it's not that big a deal. Even when the train is running over them, they ignore what's happening and blame the negative repercussions on anything or anyone but themselves. Now, I mean usually for both. I've met some teenage sages and aging morons. I know one thing for sure. When I met Sondra, the first thing that entered my mind, once we'd consummated the relationship, was regret over not having much time left to enjoy her. I don't just mean sexually. Even though I was 42 at the time and could live to be 100, it would have been nice to have had a head start and have shared more. Like Schopenhauer said, love is a trick of the genes, just for reproduction, and then it's all over. Well, that's probably true for the younger generation, and I'm not knocking lust and passion, but give me a slow burn any day. Learning to love Sondra from the inside out, on an intellectual level, including the minor foibles, was the best lesson I'd ever had on love. As beautiful as she was and is now, I fell in love with her mind first. That's a big deal. Liam and Mina were a short-lived item. By short-lived, I mean that they lasted a meager 6 weeks. Liam told me that he knew in the beginning it wouldn't work out, but that he was happy to have the company. Mina showed him around town and helped him deal with his depression until her own dark side emerged. At first, they jumped into bed quickly. Liam said that she was like a jackrabbit on acid. He apparently laid there while she scrambled all over him like a lusty insect. I can imagine Liam being a bit of a flop, though, so it's no wonder to me that Mina had to do all the work. What freaked Liam out the most was how paranoid she was. She was also very fragile and possessive. It wasn't long before he was treating her like trash. No matter how he treated her, she wanted more. Apparently, the final straw was the last time they were in bed together. This is how Liam put it. "We were, doing it, you know. Then, Oh my God, it was bizarre. I got on top, not that I like that position too much. I mean, I'm not lazy, but anyway, she suddenly whispers into my ear, "Hurt me." I said, "I don't want to hurt you." She continued trying to get me to hurt her. I'll admit I wasn't a perfect gentleman to her, especially towards the end, but I certainly wasn't going to hurt her. I'm not into the rough stuff. She's got problems, but, well. Then she called me daddy, and I freaked. Why do men like that? It's pedophilic, isn't it? After that, he told her that he wanted to break up, and it took a turn for the worse. She became one of those obsessoids who stalk, spy, and threaten suicide. Even though she operated fine at work, after hours she became a demon with only one objective: to win Liam back. Talk about flogging a dead horse. It was then that Liam went to his first workshop at the Willow Lake Group. Coincidentally, it happened to be my first time too. It was also the first time that we both met Sondra. I'll never forget it.